All right. So assalamu alaikum, everybody. So welcome
No,
to
so
biology. All right. So we're going to be talking about photosynthesis today. All right. All right. All right. So Yusuf, tell me something about photosynthesis.
something about photosynthesis. Mm, that's how plants make their food, brother.
All right. So plants make their food. All right. So Fariha, what else? What else do we know? Food. All right. And so what kind of organisms use photosynthesis? Is it just plants? Just
Brother,
plants?
plant cells.
Plant cells, right? So it's different kinds of things, right? So photosynthesis, right, as we see in the picture, right? Like this is how plants and other kinds of organisms make food. So it's not only plants, right? There are other things also that make food as well, right? There's different kinds of algae. There's there's actually photosynthetic bacteria, right? So there's bacteria. So this picture right over here, right? Do you see this picture right over here? Right? I think this is called cyanobacteria. This is a kind of a bacteria that actually makes. You see the green pigment, right? So that's this bacteria makes its own food in the same way that a plant makes its own food, right?
Mm,
So there, the basics, you guys have studied before, right? Sunlight is like the source of the energy, right? The plant takes on carbon dioxide and water and releases oxygen, right, and creates sugar, right?
mm,
So this is the same this is the same process that all of these organisms are using, right?
mm.
So let's take a look at this equation right over here, right? This chemical equation right over here, right? So Freehead, can you read this for me? Explain to me like what's going on in this chemical equation right over here. Yeah. So read it. So interpret what do these things mean? Mm-hmm. Yes, that whole thing together is carbon dioxide, right? Okay. Next. Right. So on the left, right? So on the left, right? Is that what's being taken in, or that's what's being produced?
So it's being produced, brother.
Taken in. So on the left is like the reactants.
Oh, sorry. On the right side is what's
Yeah.
being produced.
Right. So on the left is like what are the reactants. On the right is like what we're making, what we're producing. All right. So Yusuf, what are we making here?
Uh, six carbon molecules, 12 hydrogen molecules, and then
All right.
six oxygen
But but,
molecules
but so
plus
what is all this together? Right? So C6H12O6 as one thing. What do you think that is?
um. It's not water, brother. I don't.
Right. So
Maybe
what is it? Sugar,
sugar.
right?
Obviously, sugar,
So this right
sugar.
here, right? This is how they write the sugar molecule. Remember we talked
Uh,
about, glucose having six carbons, right?
yeah,
Do you remember
yeah,
talking about that, right? It looks like a
yeah,
little hexagon kind of thing, right? It has
yeah,
six
yeah. I remember
carbons.
now.
Okay. So this right
All
here is
right.
sugar that's being produced, and then oxygen,
And then
obviously, that's produced, right?
this is six oxygen molecules.
Oxygen molecules, right? So that's like the basics. So we're gonna talk a little bit more. We're gonna talk about in detail about what's going on. All right. So first of all, this process occurs in the chloroplast, right? So the chloroplast is what gives all of this its green kind of color, right? So these are some different kinds of pictures, right? Some of these pictures are more like cartoon kind of pictures, and then this picture over here is like from the electron microscope, right? This one right over here.
Mm,
So this shows you that the chloroplast has these like stacks of different things. All right, you see that? So
mm.
these stacks, these stacks are called thylakoids. You see, it looks like a whole bunch of like green like plates stacked on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
Right. So those plates, those are called thylakoids, right? And obviously the membrane surrounding them is called a thylakoid membrane, right? The space surrounding it, right? See the space surrounding all these thylakoid membranes? That's called a
Uh,
stroma,
mm,
right? And then there's an outer membrane of the chloroplast, right?
mm.
And then there's an inner membrane of the chloroplast, right? So it's pretty
Oh,
complex, right? So I think this picture is
chlor
not the best one,
of the chloroplast, brother.
right?
Where's the chloroplast, brother?
So you see this whole thing is the chloroplast. This whole thing.
Oh, so the membrane is chloroplast.
The membrane is the membrane defines the chloroplast, tells you where it is, right? Right.
All right, so
Uh, uh,
everything inside the membrane is chloroplast. That's what you're
right.
saying.
Yeah, the whole thing. So this picture over here is a little bit better. So this picture I think is not as good. Let's take a look at this picture over here, right? So it kind of shows you the same thing, right? You have the chloroplast outer membrane and inner membrane, right? First of all, do you guys see right over here where it says outer membrane and inner membrane, right? So
Yeah.
there's two layers there. There's two layers there, right? Outer and inner membrane, right? Now inside, right? Again, you see those stacks of things, right? You see some kind of like plates being stacked inside. Those are the thylakoids. Okay, so the thylakoid has its own membrane that defines it. Makes sense, right? And then there's a thylakoid space. That's the space like inside each thylakoid. So inside each thylakoid, there's like a little bit of an empty space. All right,
Inside the thylakoid is an empty space.
right,
Mm.
right. So if you cut the thylakoid, there's gonna be like an empty space inside.
Mm.
It's not like empty, like there's things there, but
Yeah.
there's like a space there. All right.
Mm.
Now, around the thylakoid, so if you're like inside, Fareeha, let me ask you, if you're like inside the chloroplast, however you're outside the thylakoids, where are you? What is that space called? Can you figure that out?
You're asking me, me, brother, or for whoever
I think Fareeha
uh,
first. What do you think?
organisms use it.
Right. So what is the space called that's outside the thylakoid? However, it's inside the chloroplast. What is that called? All right, Yusuf, what do you think also?
What is it, brother?
So what is the space called based on the diagram of the space that's outside the thylakoids but inside the chloroplast?
Outside the thylakoids, but inside the chloroplast, brother. That is
Right.
called the stroma, brother.
hmm So it's
Right, brother?
correct. So it's correct. So Yusuf got it correct. It's called the stroma. See this word
You already
stroma?
know, brother.
All
You
right.
already know.
You see this word stroma, right?
Yeah.
You see how that's outside of those stacks? It's outside the stacks, but it's still
Mm.
inside the big chloroplast. You see that?
Yeah.
All right, Freehead, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, all right, good. So this is just like a little bit of a basic. So we you could refer back to these pictures, but this is just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of like what this kind of looks like. All right. All right. So in photosynthesis, there's basically two portions. Okay, there's two portions. One on the left you see is called light dependent reactions, and then light independent reactions. Right. So one of these, like for example, like really only can take place during the daytime, right? Yusuf,
Mm-hmm.
which one can only really happen during the daytime?
Light dependent reactions, which can only take place during the daytime. The production of um ATP, NADPH,
Right,
AD, uh, and
right,
what's it called, brother?
right. So
Oxygen.
right. So
Yes,
so
and
light
the
depend.
production of
Right.
oxygen.
So light dependent. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because that means it depends on light. Right. It needs the light.
Mm,
Light independent. Right. Happens later on. Right. So
mm,
the light dependent reaction kind of happens first. Right. Because
mm,
it needs the light. It uses the light. It performs its reactions, and then it and then all the things from there go to the light independent reactions, and then even if light is not there, is not present, those independent reactions can continue, right? That's why it's called
mm.
independent, right? You understand, right? Right.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at this picture right here. This kind of gives you like a little bit of an overview, right? So in the light dependent reaction, see light coming in, right?
Yeah.
Light coming, and it hits these stacks, right? Freeha, what are these stacks called again? You see these green stacks here? Thy- Thylakoids, right? So these thylakoids, it's going to hit those. The reactions are going to occur, which we're going to take a look at. Oxygen is produced in this first part, in the light-dependent reaction. You see that? Oxygen is produced here.
Mm.
Now, Yusuf, what is kind of produced in the light-dependent reactions? What do we see that's being produced here?
Oxygen, ATP, and NADPH, brother.
Good. So all the arrows coming out, right? Oxygen,
But
ATP,
so is
and NAD.
ADP and NADP being produced? Because these lines are going from both sides. So that does that mean
Yeah,
it's being
I'm,
produced
I'm,
from both?
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this one should go backwards.
Mm.
Yeah, let's take a look at the other picture. I think there might be a mistake. It's possible.
Because they're using the NADPH and
Yeah, yeah,
ATP, and then that
yeah.
will
So it should
convert.
go to ATP and then back
Exactly.
to
That's
the
what
other
I'm
side.
saying. There.
All right. So let's take a look at the
Exactly.
other one, right? Now
Yeah.
in the second part, right? Yusuf, what is being taken in and what is being produced in the second part, the light independent reactions.
Um. They're using CO2
Hmm.
to basically create sugars.
Good, right? So in the second part, so oxygen is produced in the first part, carbon
Mm.
dioxide is taken in the second part. That makes sense?
The energy is also used up, right?
Correct, right. So the ATP and NADPH, that energy is also used up.
Mm.
All right. All right. So in this case, I think this picture is a little bit better. So in this case, you see the arrows from the NADP and ADP, right? So I think
Mm.
they may have messed up the arrows in the previous one, right? So this is just kind of showing you the same kind of thing, right? On the left, you
Mm.
have the light dependent reaction. Light comes in, does a whole bunch of stuff, creates the oxygen, produces oxygen, right?
Okay. Okay, brother.
AT,
Wait.
wait just a
Can,
second. Let me just
can
review this a second. So ATP is produced and
mm.
NADPH is produced. You see the arrows coming off? Okay.
Yeah.
It goes into this thing. Now, on the right side, these are the ones that don't require light
Mm.
independent reactions. In this case, this is called the Calvin cycle that takes the carbon dioxide and turns it into sugar. All right,
Mm.
you have a question?
Yes. So you see at the bottom it says ADP plus P.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean it's producing? It's also producing ATP, or it's taking, or the phosphate that was disconnected is going back with the ADP, but it's not connected.
Yeah, correct. So the phosphate was just disconnected from the original ATP.
Okay, so like the phosphate is going back with the thing.
It's
All right.
basically going back, right? Right. So remember, in the first part, we're creating a little bit of ATP and a little bit of NADPH. These are like energy molecules, right? These are like the energy molecules right over here, right? And they're gonna
Mm.
go. Those are important because they need to go and help in the second part, the Calvin cycle, right? So first part requires light. Second part does not require light. All right.
Yeah.
All right. This is kind of showing you again the same kind of thing, right? The first part requires light on the left, right? Light energy is coming in into the thylakoids. Those are the light reactions, right? And oxygen is made there, is produced there, right?
Mm.
ATP and NADPH are made there also, and so they go and help in the second part, the Calvin cycle, or the light independent reactions, and that's where carbon dioxide is taken in to make glucose, right? So it's kind of showing the same kind of thing. All right. So let's look at the light dependent reactions first. The first part, right, contains basically three parts. Sorry, the first part it takes light energy in and it produces oxygen, right? So within that, within the thylakoids, you have these different kinds of things: photosystem one, photosystem two, and electron transport chain. All right. So Freya, where have we heard one of these terms before? We've heard one of these terms before somewhere. Where have we heard them?
We heard electron transport chain
Mm-hmm.
in the ATP cycle.
In the ATP cycle? Close. Yusuf, where have you heard electron transport chain again? Or before?
And cycle to create brother, inside mitochondria, brother.
Correct. So in cell respiration, right?
Yes, cell
All right.
respiration.
Cell respiration, right? So in here, there's also going to be an electron transport chain. All right?
Mm.
All right, so let's take a look at this a little bit more closely. What's going on in the thylakoids? All right. So, so over here, this is kind of an overview, right? So we're also going to take a look at some other better pictures than these ones here. But we're going to just go
Mm.
through this first, and then we're going to go take a look at other pictures. So this is kind of showing you the overall system in the thylakoid, right? So this just to see, look, this is happening in the thylakoid membrane. You see that thylakoid space, right? So this is
Mm.
where it's occurring, right? So let's take a look first. What's happening? So first, in photosystem one, right, light comes in and hits this protein right over here. So when the light when the chlorophyll molecules absorb sunlight, they
Mm.
give off high energy electrons, right? So the light comes in, right,
Mm.
and that energy, kind of charges up, causes the electrons to, to be given off by some molecules, and they're going to go to some other molecules, right?
Mm.
So they move through certain electron carriers, just like we saw during cellular respiration, right? The electrons were being kind of like moved through, right? Electrons were kind of falling from one place to the next.
Mm.
In this case, the light energy kind of forces the electron to go into more high energy places, right?
Mm.
The basic idea is that the light comes in and forces electrons to move through electron carriers, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to put it all together later to kind of understand, right? But this is the idea first, right? So let's look at one thing at a time first. Oh, all right. So next, right? So the protons in the electron transport chain, right? All this light energy is powering these electrons to go through. Now, when the electrons go through, right, they force hydrogen ions from the outside into the inside. Do you see all this hydrogens like being moved inside over here? Right? You see this first left arrow, right? Hydrogens are being like basically forced in, right? That
Uh.
energy comes from sunlight originally, right?
Uh.
But it's being pumped through the electron carriers, and that pumps in a whole bunch of hydrogen. It forces hydrogen into the thylakoid spaces, forces it in.
Oh, so it forces it into the thylakoid area, right? Where the
Right,
thylakoids are.
right, correct, right. So forces all this hydrogen in, right? See that? This arrow coming in forces all the hydrogen in. All right. Now, next step. Now, remember, when you force a whole bunch of hydrogens in, they're going to want to escape back out,
Mm.
right? So you see this arrow right here, that blue arrow going through this protein. Those hydrogens rush back out, and as they rush out, just like water rushing back, if you try to force water, like against a wall, okay, and then you let go suddenly, well, that water is going to rush back, and that rushing back can do some kind of work,
Mm.
right? So in this case, that rushing back takes ADP and turns it into ATP,
Uh.
right? So this looks similar again to cellular respiration, right?
Mm.
Remember, there was that protein ATP synthase,
Mm.
which you have here also, that when like hydrogens rush through, the wheel turns, and it takes ADP and phosphorus and forces it back together to turn into ATP again.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? Right? So that's the idea here. All right.
See.
So now, at the end, right? So we created a little bit of ATP, right? Remember that? Okay. Now, those electrons, remember those electrons that are being pumped through? This thing, NADP, takes those electrons and it turns into NADPH. Right? So we've produced two things.
Wait, what happened?
Right? You remember those electrons that were being pumped through?
Yeah.
Forced through? So they join up with NADP plus and form NADPH. Remember like the charged battery? We talked about like it's almost like charging up a battery. So like this battery has been charged, and now at the end we have a charged battery that can be taken somewhere else to do some kind of work.
Oh.
Right? So Fariha, what are the two things that we've produced so far? What are the two things that we made? So NADP turns into NADPH. Do you see over here? The stuff on the left turns into the stuff on the right. So we've made NADPH. This is like a charged battery, right? What else did we make? What did we make on the last slide?
I know, brother.
ATP, right? All right, good. All right, all right, excellent. All right. So this is what we made so far, all right? Now, what happens is that to repeat, all right, so in this case, we're also going to be making oxygen over here, right? So in the last step, right, oxygen is going to be produced. Right?
Brother, but the main goal of this first step, the light dependent reaction,
Right.
is to create energy, right?
It's to
So
create
that they
energy,
can
right?
part.
Correct. It's to produce a little bit of ATP and NADPH so that you can go later on and do some other stuff, right?
Mhm.
So oxygen is basically like a byproduct. Right? So in this process, water is split apart into hydrogens, right? Remember those hydrogens that we needed? right? That
Mm.
came from water. So water was split apart into all of those hydrogens, and so the oxygen is going to have to be by itself now.
Mm.
So that's where that O2 is. O2 is basically kind of like a waste product of photosynthesis, right?
Mm.
So you remember all those hydrogens rushing back, okay?
Yeah.
That came from the water. So, but what else is in water? The oxygen, right? So oxygen is what's kind
Mm.
of like left over, so it kind of floats
Oh, so
off.
all those hydrogens rushing back came from water. All right.
Came from water, right?
Right.
Correct, right? So the oxygen is kind of like a byproduct, so it kind of like floats away and goes off, right? All right, so let's take a look at a little bit more of a clearer picture, right? So this kind of puts it all kind of together, all right? So we have these two photo systems right over here. You see PS1, PS2, right?
Mhm.
Those are called photo systems. What does photo stand for, Yusuf? Like the word or prefix photo. What does that kind of stand for?
Picture, brother. Picture.
Picture or light, right? Like photograph,
Yes,
uh,
photograph.
tele, photo lens, right? So anything to do with
Mm.
light is like the prefix photo goes with
Photo.
it, right?
Photosynthesis. Light
Photosynthesis, right?
synthesis,
So in
brother.
this case, these two proteins. This is where light is absorbed, right? That's where light
Mm.
is absorbed in these photosystems right over here. Right?
Where? Wait, hold
You
up.
see,
Where's the
you see,
protein?
you see PS1 and PS. You see the green ones, those big green
Oh,
things.
so these. Okay. Oh, so these are inside. These are on top of a membrane, brother.
Yeah, they're embedded in the membrane. They're inside the membrane,
Uh,
right?
uh,
And you see inside it says thylakoid lumen. You see that? And then outside is the stroma. So this is like the
uh,
boundary between the stroma and the inside thylakoid.
mm.
All right. So light is absorbed at these green places. All right. So what it does is that when that happens, you see over here, you see this negative thing over here? Those are
Yeah.
electrons. Those are electrons being forced through. Right? Light
Mm.
energy comes in and forces these electrons to go through.
Mm.
Right? And so that does two things. One, those electrons go up here and join with NADP to form NADPH. You guys see that?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that happens. Another thing that happens, what's going on over here? What is this showing? This arrow over here. What is this showing over here?
It's pulling in hydrogen, brother. It's pulling in hydrogen.
It's hydrogen is being pumped in over here, right? Now this
Mm.
hydrogen accumulates over here in the inside in the lumen, right? It starts to accumulate right
Mm.
over here, and we have like a whole bunch. It rushes back out through the ATP synthase. You see that? It rushes back
Uh.
out, and as it rushes
So,
back out, what is it doing over here?
uh, it's wait. Oh, it's creating ATP through
It's
the
making
ADP.
ATP, right? So you see the
Uh,
two things we made: ATP and
and ADP
NADPH,
and ADPH. Okay.
right? So
So, brother, in PS2, right?
mhm.
Photosynthesis
Yeah,
two,
photosystem two. Yep.
photosystem two, H2O. That's the only part where H2O is being converted into O2, or is that happening throughout the thing?
Only at this location, right? Now there's like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of these all over the chloroplast, right?
Uh,
But within this system, this is the only place where that's happening.
I see.
Right? Now this whole system repeats like all over the place, right? There's gonna be like a whole
Mm.
bunch of these, right? Let's take a look at another picture, right? So this one also. So again, a lot of this is just looking at. Oh, the class dojo. Oh. The only possibility is like, I think some whiteboards, you can like you can get a URL, and whoever has the URL can view the whiteboard. But it's very limited. Like, yeah, it's very So that's gonna be very limited because you could put like maybe a picture on there, but you're not gonna be able to like import slides and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, if you want to draw, I think you can, or if you want to do a math problem, but like slides, like like a lot of things, it's not gonna. Yeah, I haven't seen it. That's the only limited thing. So a lot of this is like if you take a look at different pictures, right? You kind of like
Mm.
sometimes you understand better than looking at other pictures, right? So this is kind of
Uh,
shows the same kind of thing. So take a look at this picture, right? So you see the different photo systems, right? You see in the green,
Uh,
right? Light is coming in, right? And it's pumping the electrons through, right? Pumping the electrons through because that light energy.
brother, but
Mm.
what do the thylakoids themselves do? This membrane is the membrane that's surrounding the
Yeah,
thylakoid, right?
yeah. So I'm sure that so the thylakoid space. One thing is that it holds all these hydrogens, right? You see all these hydrogens.
Yeah, but what do the thylakoids do? Like, what are like they responsible
Well,
for?
they're like spaces to hold all these things, right?
I'm talking about those little
Yeah,
circle things. You know, those little cell things. They just hold all these things.
yeah. They just hold. I mean, so I guess one thing is that they provide a good surface area, right? Like if you have like a whole bunch of these little plates all over the place, that provides a
Mm.
lot of surface area for a lot more of these sets of proteins to be put.
Oh.
So that's maybe that's one thing, right?
Oh
So
wait, so these proteins are embedded on the thylakoids?
yeah, so a membrane is like something that surrounds something, right?
Yeah, yeah, but like,
So
so
so so
okay, okay. Can you
this
go
is
back?
like yeah, so this is like within the membrane.
Wait,
It's
wait. Can
not
you go back to the picture of the thylakoid just real quick?
yeah.
Oh, I just want to clear something up. Okay, yeah. So this huge membrane right here, right,
Mhm.
is the membrane that's surrounding all of these thylakoids that are inside, right?
Right. There's an outer membrane that surrounds the whole chloroplast as a whole,
Uh-huh.
right? That's
Now,
not
inside this chloroplast
yeah,
occurs two different things:
right,
the Calvin cycle and the conversion of sunlight to ATP,
right,
right?
yeah,
Okay, so these thylakoids, on top of these thylakoids, their own membranes, they have the proteins embedded on them.
correct,
Okay, now I understand. I thought
yeah,
this was happening on top of that out, like the membrane on top
oh yeah,
that's
no,
surrounding all of these thylakoids,
yeah, no.
the
So
chloroplast
yeah, so
membrane.
if you look at the picture, so take a look at this picture, right?
Mm.
So it says here thylakoid space, and this is stroma, right? So stroma is like within the
Yeah,
chloroplast,
it's
right?
within,
It's
right?
like within, right?
To
So
the thylakoid membrane.
yeah, so
Yes.
this must be like within so outside of the stroma, there's another membrane that surrounds the whole chloroplast. You
Mm.
understand what I'm saying? Right. So again, it's kind of showing the same thing, right? You see this eight, right? A whole bunch of hydrogen like rushing back, pumps
Mm.
this, turns this synthase and it makes the ATP, right? So same kind of thing, but just like if you see different pictures, you kind of understand it. All right. Here's another one. That's kind of showing the same kind of thing, right? So these photosystems, they have the chlorophyll molecule within them.
Mm.
All right. All right. All right. So let's keep going. All right. All right. I think we talked about the summary a little bit. All right. So let's go to light independent reactions. Right. So now we're going to go to the light independent reactions. Right. Now these light independent reactions, right? They're taking place, I think in the stroma. Right. If you take a look, right. So once these things ATP and NADPH are produced, then in the stroma, right, surrounding all these thylakoids, that's where these light independent reactions are going to take place, right? And so this is called the Calvin cycle, right? So I guess this was
Mm.
in honor of this person who discovered the pathways of photosynthesis, right? So they call it the
Uh,
Calvin cycle. So this part again does not require light. This can happen without light, right? And this is where carbon dioxide is taken in to make sugars. Okay. All right.
mm.
Now in this case, right, that ATP and NADPH we produce, this is where it's consumed. This is where it's going to be used up.
Mm.
Right. All right. So again, we're going to go through these pictures. I think these pictures they don't show the overall thing as well, but we're going to just go through them, and then we're going to look at the other pictures as well to get a better idea. All right. So you have carbon dioxide, right? So carbon dioxide is coming in and enters the
Oh.
Calvin cycle, right? So it comes in from the atmosphere, it comes in, enters the Calvin cycle, all right, and it joins it together with whatever molecules are already in the cycle, right? In the cycle, there's other things going on in the cycle, right? There's already other molecules there. So every new
Uh-huh.
carbon dioxide that comes in and enzyme joins it together with whatever was there previously.
Uh-huh.
All right. So inside, right, the one carbon joins with a two carbon molecule to form a three carbon molecule. See these three circles?
Yeah.
You see these like three circles here, right? So the one
Mm-hmm.
carbon must have joined with something that had two carbons, and now it has
Mm-hmm.
three, and now it's going along in the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So again, these are just some details. We're going to put it all together so we can look at the whole picture in a little bit. All right. All right. So again, over here, right, you see how ATP and NADPH are being consumed. You see that? You see this arrow? ATP is turning into ADP. NADPH is turning back into NADP plus. You see that? So these things that were made before in the previous one, now they're being consumed. Now they're being used up. Now they're being used up. All right? So in this case, right, you have in this cycle, right, you're forming these three carbon molecules. You can have three circles, right?
Mhm.
And what's going to happen is that some of these three carbon molecules are going to go off in this cycle at a certain point. Some of these three carbon molecules are going to go off in order to form glucose, in order to form sugar. All right. I think this picture is not showing it as well. So we'll just try to get like some idea, and then we'll go back. We're going to go to the better pictures. All right. Right. So at some point, right, some of these three carbon molecules that are going in the cycle, they're going to be pulled out, and they're going to go and form glucose, and sugar and other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the end goal of photosynthesis, right? Is to produce sugar.
Yeah.
All right. Now, once those once those three carbon sugars are taken, compounds are taken out,
Mm-hmm.
well, then the other ones they sort of rearrange, right? So here's what you have, right? Right. So over here you have, 12 three carbon molecules, right? You have 12 of them, right? Now two of them go away, right? So now you have 10 of them left. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So those are going to be rearranged eventually into these 5 carbon molecules.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, we're going to take a look at some other better pictures in a little bit. All right. So let's take a look at this one. I think these pictures are better. They put it all together a little bit better. Right. All right. So the carbon dioxide enters the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The carbon dioxide enters the cycle. All right. So it's going through, right, and it joins with whatever's coming over here, right, and it
Uh-huh.
forms this 3 carbon. Right. See the 3 circles, 3 carbon. Right.
Yeah.
Now, this over here, right, is being modified a little bit, right? It turns from this thing PGA into this thing G3P. Still has 3 carbons, but it just has it's more of like a higher energy molecule. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
energy has been input from ATP and NADPH. Make sense?
Uh-huh.
All right. So some energy has been put in to create this thing G3P. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have 12 of these. All right. So you have 12 of these. All right. So you have 12 of these G3Ps, and each time in the cycle, 2 of them go off. You see this? 2 molecules go off.
And they form a 6-carbon glucose, right?
Right, correct. They form 6 carbon glucose, right?
Mhm.
So these 12, right, there's 10 left because 2 went away, right? So you have 10
Mhm.
left in the cycle. Now, how many total carbons, Friha? If I have 10 molecules of G3P, how many total carbons do I have there?
Brother, you have 30.
Right.
But the answer is 30.
So I have 10. So I have 30 total, right? So G3P has how many carbons? How many of these purple circles do I have? 3, and I have 10 of those, right? It says 10 molecules of G3P, so that's total 30, right? Right. So what
Mhm.
happens is that those molecules, they rearrange into a 5 carbon molecules. See that? See 5 purples, right? But now you only have 6 of those, right?
Mhm.
Because 6 times 5 is 30. So the 10 3 carbon ones, 30 total carbons, rearrange into 6 5 carbon molecules. Does that make sense? Still 30, but it's kind of just rearranged. Does that make sense?
5 carbon molecules. All right.
Right? So 6 times 5, 30, right? So again, so these 30, right, they're going to rearrange, right? Now, when one of these molecules comes over here, it joins with one carbon dioxide, right? So you have 5 carbons, add one carbon dioxide, now you have 6.
Oh, so now you basically have another sugar?
So what happens is that 6 carbon then breaks apart into 3 carbons. You see that? Right?
Uh-huh.
You see, once the carbon dioxide was added, I don't have
Mm,
like a big 6 carbon sugar here or a 6 carbon
mm,
molecule. What I have here is what? I have a 3 carbon, right? So
mm,
when the 5 plus 1 from carbon dioxide forms a 6, that broke apart into 2 3s.
mm.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have to kind of memorize it, but like if you kind of understand like what's going on, try to
Wait,
look at the numbers. Okay, I have
hold up.
12 of
So if
this.
they broke into two threes,
Hmm.
then isn't that just a more of a waste of energy because the ATP, they have to use up more
Um,
ATP to make it back into
well, it depends. So just because something is 6 carbon doesn't mean it's in the right orientation and everything like that. It could
to
be
yeah,
something
yeah,
right,
to make it
right,
sugar, but like you could have
yeah,
just taken more down.
yeah. So this is the you know this is I mean just the fact that this happens is like pretty amazing process, right? Right. So right. Because it has 6 carbons, we don't know that that means that can
Yeah,
directly go to make sugar, right?
yeah,
So
that makes sense. But like you could just rearrange it without breaking it up again.
I
You
mean
know what I'm
it's
saying?
possible, but maybe that could be more inefficient.
Is it? Yeah, that could. It is possible, brother. It is always possible.
Right. So again, this is kind of showing you the same thing again, right? So over here, right, you have a 5 carbon sugar over here, right? A carbon dioxide comes along and joins with it. So now you have a 6 carbon, right? But that 6 breaks apart into 2 of these 3 carbons, right? And then that's modified with ATP and NADPH into this other slightly different 3 carbon, right? And then so some of these they go off, right? Some of these they go off, right? And the rest continue in the cycle,
Mhm.
right? And this is kind of showing you the same kind of thing, right? So remember those ATPs and NADPHs, they came from the light reaction, right? All right. So that's basically, uh, light independent reactions, right? So the idea was that in the beginning, right? So on the left, right, we had the light dependent reactions, all right? All right. So how about all right? So Faria, tell me the whole process. Tell me about photosynthesis. Tell me everything you know. From start to finish. What do you know? What's photosynthesis?
Okay, so there's you mean like the whole thing from the beginning of the lesson?
Yeah, from the beginning of the lesson. What do you remember?
Okay, so there is two types of things for photosynthesis. One light dependent reaction, one light independent reaction. In light dependent reaction, um, there's a cyclosphere, right?
Hmm.
In where light enters and water enters and oxygen is produced, and in that there's also NADP, and ATP is produced,
Hmm.
and there's the Calvin cycle.
Hmm. All right, good. Let's go to. All right, so let me go to. I'm gonna go to the first picture. All right, so explain here. All right, so